Hello and welcome to this podcast for Electropages. I am joined by a special guest today, the CEO of Sourceability, which we actually had an interview earlier on, and you can see that interview in a link in the description below. And we are joined by Jens. And so could you go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Jens Gamperl. I'm the founder and the CEO of Sourceability. I'm 58 years old and I spent the last 40 years in the electronics industry. So I had my 40th anniversary on August 1st.
Fantastic. Last time we talked to Sourceability, we saw some absolutely incredible stuff with your data link software, showing how you could predict like future stock of components and availability. But have you got anything new to share with us today?
Oh, actually, if you're working or if a portion of your company's technology, you always develop new technology, and you have to pivot and develop and pivot and develop. So data link obviously is a very complex product that has so many functionalities that we continuously developing on the product itself. I think what's really exciting is something that I can share is that we are up to close to release and go public with a partnership with Cadence, where data link as a product will be embedded in the design tools, in the EDA tools from Cadence, and engineers in the design process now can have access to this technology. This is something that I think it's another milestone in the history of sourceability that confirms that the track going digital and looking for these partnerships and creating a one world from a design to supply chain that is developing fast, and we are in the midst of it, and that makes me really proud.
So is this the first time you've integrated your solution into like a development environment?
If we talk about a PCB in a development environment like EDA tool like Cadence, it is the first time. There are not so many players out in the market. We have integrated portions of our technology into some manufacturers of PCBs, so the APIs and the technology is embedded in others. But through Cadence, it will be made available for tens of thousands of users. Which I think on the design side, which is not the core, obviously, of a distribution business where you're more part of the supply chain and not that much on the design side. So that's for us a huge milestone.
Fantastic. Now, obviously, Cadence is one of many different PCB tools for engineers out there. Are you planning to look into other tools as well in the future?
We do. Look, obviously, we talk with a number of companies that are out there and they have no partner yet. We know from Siemens they partnered, they bought Supply Frame, so on their end, Mentor Graphics, there's a partnership. We know Altium and Octoport. So you see, it's always kind of a data pieces and the transactional pieces with the design. There are other companies out there that are interested, but the partnership with Cadence for us, who's from our perspective, the number one player in this market, obviously it needs us to focus on this partnership and their demands. So we created a lot of resources also to fulfill their demands so that we could create this partnership.
So just as a quick question about the actual workings of your integration into as like an API into this software package, how does it actually work in terms of like, does the engineer drop parts in and they can see availability immediately during the schematic stage?
Exactly. So what the engineer does inside OrCAD, they develop the boards, then they create a bill of material, and immediately they have different informations. They have informations about market availability, so they can order from the application, so they can put the bill of material, and they also get the risk. So if they have design tools into the board that might have a high-risk design score, that means then they can reevaluate if they really want to put that component on the board or if there's alternates. So it gives them a little bit more. If we're talking, look, since 24 months, we're talking about risk assessment. It's all about, everyone wants to know how risky is my bill of material, especially if you go in long-term, long life cycle products, cars. industrial products. They need to know if they design a product today, if there is a risk that a product goes obsolete, yeah, or if there is a risk on the manufacturer side, on the capacity. So that is what we then try on the design level to make visible to them.
Obviously, I think it's quite important that when you're designing a circuit, you need to know before you get to the PCB stage, you need to make sure that the components you've selected at that point are all in stock and the risk is low.
Yeah, exactly. So and I think that's if you look and that's the beauty now on the design world. When we started these discussions with PCB designer, with board designer, EDA tools manufacturers, it was about that they said the task of a designer is to create the best product. For them, it's not to what's the risk on the supply chain side. It's I want to design the best possible product. So, which often then ended up that they had issues in the supply chain because there was a technology that was used that was unique and was not replaceable. So now what we do is that in the process of designing, the designer gets an idea if whatever he puts together has a certain risk when it goes later into production. And I think this is something where we connect also the supply chain people with the design people.
And I think it would be fair to say that in a lot of engineering teams, especially big ones, there's a very large gap between those who source parts and those who actually design the board in the first place.
It is, yeah. But the question always is, or the task is, the designer has to design the best possible product. Yeah,
of course. And there could be a component in that design that's really good, but then the sourcing team says, actually, that's very hard to get a hold of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so as a company, because I've got a question in a second about COVID and supply chains in general, but before I go there, what's been the biggest challenge that you've seen engineers face in the field of sourcing components up till this day?
If you look, the engineers, I think they see some, they have some of the tasks or the challenges that the supply chain people have, but not that many. I think there's very good distributors out there that are in the NPI stage or in the design stage really support the engineers world. If you look to companies like DigiKey or Mauser, I think they are top notch in how and what they provide, all the inventory they have, how quick they can ship. There's all the service they give. I think these companies are really designed also for supporting the design world. If you go to supply chain, all of a sudden, supply chain always has the problem of forecasting. Where does the forecast come? Comes from your customer, from your sales team, whatever. So you have to have a certain flexibility. On the design side, I think, yes, they might face some challenges, but since it's not these big quantities, they are not facing the same challenges like the supply chain people.
And you mentioned something I thought was quite interesting. You talked about when it comes to sourcing parts, how does sourceability... Okay, let's start this question again, sorry. So let's say you've got a manufacturer who manufactures some components. Yeah. How do you kind of estimate the risk around that component? Because when you, let's say a manufacturer says this component is going to be made for the next 10 years, but there may not be any guarantee on that, is there? And so how does sourceability handle that there may not be a guarantee that it's going to continue to be manufactured, even if the manufacturer says it will be?
I think this is exactly the same, a little bit like at the stock exchange. If you look at stock, you always look in the past, about methods that you try to measure what happens in the past in certain commodities, in certain product families.
I see.
How long did they live? And then you take your AI behind and you try to project what it is. At the end of the day, the truth really only can come from the manufacturer. So we depend on information from the manufacturer, but we can project that if that's what they tell us about this product, is that what they exactly the same what happened to products that they before. So I think this is where the big difference is now. And so you have the algorithms and you take data from the past and you try to project it in the future.
And so you could almost say that what sourceability does is effectively build a credit score on manufacturers and essentially their honesty of how well they've stuck to their claims.
Yeah, and we call it a score. Yeah, it's not a credit score; it's a
No,
design risk
kind of,
score.
yeah, I know what you mean, yeah.
Yeah, yes, yeah. That's exactly what we try to do. Yeah.
Fantastic. Now, how did Sourceability, how did your business change during the COVID eras? Because obviously supply chain management went out the window, let's be honest. It was absolutely chaotic. No one could
Yes.
get parts. Manufacturers couldn't get anything out the doors and stuff. How did Sourceability deal with that period of time? And did you see more business as a result of it?
Of course, yeah. If you look at the company history and how look at our growth in between 19 and 2022, yeah, I think the numbers they speak for themselves. Um, the most important what we realize is that what we built in the years before, the network of suppliers, the network of relationships to sources, yeah, then really paid off. We were able to grow in 2019, I guess our revenue was like somewhere 170 million, something like this, and last year it was 1 billion. Yeah,
Oh,
and we also had
went up,
to,
didn't
yeah,
it?
yeah, and we had to also to kind of reorganize ourselves because all of a sudden from March 14, 2020, everything was remote. All of a sudden we went from offices with 100 people to empty offices, and we had just our organization. Uh, I think we did pretty well. So we took advantage of the situation for our customers, that we had these networks in place, that we had the capital strength, to buy inventory for our customers and try to avoid causing shortages. So the portion of the business before 2020, the most of our portion was like being part of supply chain in the process of our customers. And then all of a sudden it became an allocation, and it was important, yeah, to find product that officially even wasn't available.
I
So,
can
and we
imagine,
did
yeah.
good.
Because, yeah, I mean, I remember seeing lead times for around 52, 53 weeks for some parts. And you would be
We
lucky
still
to
have
get,
that.
you'd be lucky to get a reel of anything
Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah. We still have that. We still see that. So, but there's also that everyday product gets shipped. Yeah, and the
Yeah.
question is if everyone needs 100% of what they get shipped or not. And the manufacturers then in 2020, when and people place their orders, maybe double or triple their volume. Everything was NCNR, so the manufacturers ship. If your demand goes down or not, they still ship. And I think this is now where we can find one more. The market right now is an inventory market. We went from a shortage, as always. And I've seen that 4 or 5 times in the last 20 years. Shortage is over, market jumps off the cliff, yeah, and all of a sudden we are in an inventory market. And now we have high inventories, still some shortages, yeah, but high inventory in distribution with our customers, EMS and OEM customers. And now I see a different risk now with increasing interest rates. It's more and more expensive to finance these inventories, which might cause at a certain point that some of the players in the market really have to offload inventory below the pricing that they've paid, yeah, but it still might be cheaper than paying interest rates that are significantly increased in the last 12 to 18 months.
Oh, now that is an interesting conversation. Could you elaborate a bit more why interest rates are bad for inventory being held in a warehouse?
Yeah, if you're not having the cash, yeah, to pay your inventory, if you have to finance, if you have loans, company loans, yeah, the interest rates went up. Here in the US, I would say from somewhere 3% 2 years ago, yeah, it was maybe between 2 and 3% that you paid for a company loan to now more than 10%. So the cost of financing inventory increased by 3 times, yeah, which has a huge impact
Blimey.
on every single company that holds inventory.
And you also mentioned another term which I've not actually heard before, because obviously I don't deal with distribution. And you talk about inventory markets versus, and what's the other one? Sorry, because one's where you sell, where you have a surplus of inventory, and what's the other one?
Yeah, I think we have that I see different markets. There's a shortage market. We were in a shortage, so now we have
Right.
high inventory. I would say in maybe 9 months we have a market where we have a regular level of inventory, yeah, and people going back to regular forecasting. If not, and this is the markets, might increase by demand. So all we hear in the last 6 months is China is slow. They are slow. It's not what it is, what's supposed to be. Now we heard first iPhone produced in India is in the market, so there is a shift. If we have an increase on demand out of India and China, immediately the market that tries to consolidate right now, might be back in a market with higher demand than capacity, and we might see again an increase of shortages. So the market now to balance from a shortage market immediately to a high inventory market, and now it has to absorb the inventory, might take, I don't know, maybe 9 months. A lot of our, and I've never seen that before, a lot of our customers have 1 year inventory. Yeah. So imagine you have for 1 year, you have enough inventory for your production. Usually that was like in the 90 days. Yeah, they would have 90 days buffer.
Yeah. But now you're saying that people are storing up to a year's worth of parts to guarantee they can get those manufacturing times good and that they've got a consistent supply of parts internally.
Yes. Yeah. And they might have, they might have ordered more than they maybe had in their forecast just to make sure they get supply. So now they have a little bit more than what they forecasted. And we see here and there in some industries, in the US, we are talking, I guess, since 9 months or 12 months about a recession. Yeah. And we haven't seen a recession. We still have growth. So there might be here and there a dip in demand. So I think that all plays together. It's getting a little bit more complicated on how to manage these inventories, because electronic components also have an expiration date. Usually in critical industries, people would not use date codes older than 12, 18, maybe 24 months. So that is now where I think the opportunity will be somewhere to get in a normal market within the next 3 quarters.
Now, I'm going to pick up a point you just said about expiration dates, because I've got a question about that. But before I get to that question, as of now, if you're a manufacturer of a product, is it better now to hold excess inventory from a manufacturer's point of view because of the high interest rates?
Yeah, it's it depends on the.
It's shifted to economic systems now.
I'll tell you. So the question is, if you have the cash, and you have inventory and you secure your production, I think for me as a CEO, that's okay. Yeah. Even if interest rates would give me maybe 5% right now in the US on my money, I would rather have the inventory than the interest rate. So the question is, if you have high inventory and you don't have the cash, then the question is, what's the cost of money and what's then the cost of inventory? And we talked about it with some of the customers. If they have for 2 years, some of them have for 2 years inventory. So if you offload inventory for 1 year, because if you have to carry it for 2 years and you have to finance it, obviously it's 20%, 10% plus per year. So then maybe it's better now to sell it for only 80% of what you paid with the 20% discount, but you have the cash now. So these are things that we see in our customer environment that people think about and wanna see what options they have to offload inventory.
And I suppose the software tools that you guys produce, like DataLink, allow engineers to not just make careful planning around the components they select, but careful financial decisions based on these kind of risks like interest rates, global markets, and how that's going to affect their cash flow.
And that's mainly not done by the engineers. That's mainly done by the CFO or the supply chain managers.
But they still have access to the software.
Yes. If you as a company sign up with a subscription, then everyone in your company has access to that.
And so this whole sourcing concern no longer is restrained to one department, but every single department can sort of see the different areas and the different areas of concern. So the engineer might be like, this part's really good. The sourcing team says it's hard to get. The financial officer says, unfortunately, it might be a good part and it's widely available, but right now in the market, we can't stock too much of it. And so your software solutions really basically bring all of that together under one roof.
Exactly. And I think we have the best data because we have transactional data. We really know what's available,
Oh,
what can be bought today, you know. It's not like we have data from other websites where they show availability or no stock. We know ourselves what really is transactionable and what's not transactional. That's why I think our data, the quality of our data is much better than anything else in our industry.
that's absolutely fantastic. And you're getting transactional data on these things. How would you grab that?
Yeah, because we buy and sell through the marketplace,
Well,
you
that's
know.
true.
So we know it,
I was kind of thinking, what about like, do you get or can you get transaction data on other,
we
or is it
still own
just your own data? Is it you're getting it off?
yeah, we own the only marketplace in this industry, the only independent, yeah. And I think that makes the difference. We really know for what price people buy a certain part today and at what price they sell parts. So if it's from a manufacturer or a distributor or if it's access from one of our customers, so we really can see exactly the difference, yeah, in pricing, and we see how much inventory is in the market, how much inventory comes into the market, and how much inventory flows out of the market. Yeah, so I think that is a significant differentiator because we have the data and we transact. It's all on the marketplace.
And I think, and when you said about the differentiator, would it be right to say that a lot of other distributors tend to kind of keep their sales kind of close into themselves? They don't really release the kind of data that you guys are using to drive your services.
Yes, you know, but this is also because a lot of distributors depend on relationships as a service company between the manufacturer and the customer. So they are not, and the data like ship and debit. I don't know if you take the top 2 or 3 distributors on this planet, probably 30-40% of their business is ship and debit, where the manufacturer dictates the price and dictates how much the distributor makes, and the distributor just is executing the logistics and the finances.
That's absolutely fantastic. And it's really cool to see you guys actually using that transactional data to then also influence your credit scores of companies, your point scores of companies on their reliability and what they're able to produce. Now, I've got a question about expiration of parts, and you mentioned this, and I've got a question about this because of the recent, in the past few years, all the problems with the supply chains, and then so companies start to buy things in bulk, store them in inventory so that they've always got access to them. Would you be worried that some companies may start to see the expiration dates as a guideline as opposed to a rule, and we may see older parts being left on shelves for longer, but they may still be functional within the parameters of the data sheet?
Yeah, I think they are, yeah, but it also depends how you store them, if you ever open the bag, and how it's resealed, and if it's baked or not. So it depends on the component.
Yeah.
But it's a factor. You know, at the end of the day, it's a factor. What I know doing this 40 years, even a component, we have older components now. If you go in the military environment, you know, they still use parts that are already maybe 10 years old. They still work, you know. So you usually find out pretty quick if it works or not when you put it on a board and you turn it on. But yes, it's a little bit like, you know, if you go to a grocery market and the expiration day is Sunday, you still can eat it on Monday, on Tuesday. Yeah,
Of course.
You might maybe not eat it a week later, depending if it's fish or meat or whatever. But I think, yes, most of the product still works outside the 12, 24 months for sure. Yeah, but it's not recommended.
So it's more, yeah. So they're guidelines anyway. It's designed to keep the manufacturers sort of like safe in their in what they can claim as a guarantee. Which is Sorry, go Carol.
Yeah. No. And that's, you know, that happens. So I have not seen really a lot of product in the past that was 2 years or 3 years old that it wouldn't work. Yeah. But, you know, the issue is if you're not using it for production and you really try then to offload it into the open market, yeah, if it's outside 24 months, probably the value goes down to 10% of the
Of course.
original value, because nobody wants to buy 2 or 3-year-old product. Only if there is a real critical shortage.
Well, just before we end this podcast, is there anything you'd like to say to the engineers who are currently watching this video?
You know, it's the world obviously changes, and our partnership with Cadence gives a big number of engineers access to the data through the EDA tool. For everyone else who is using other tools, yeah, obviously they can also use the data by subscribing to Data Link directly. So, and we are willing, if any of our customers have ERP systems or product lifecycle management systems, whatever they have, through our API technology, we can provide that data into their systems. So they can have it in their systems by using our technology. So and I think that's really an upside, and that's an advantage that we are. Yes, we have a very important partnership with Cadence, but if you are not using any of the EDA tools today because you're only in the supply chain and you're not designing yourself, you still can have the same information by going to datalink.com.
Well, can I just say it was an absolute pleasure to speak with you today, and I think we got some pretty interesting stuff there. Thank you ever so much. Thank you ever so much for joining us today. Thank you very much.
I have to thank you guys. It's always a pleasure being with you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Okay. Bye-bye.